crafters, and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by Dee, and today I'll be sharing this beautiful soft card made with some dry embossing to add texture. Now, I've done dry embossing with foil plates before, but I really want to try it with cover dies. So these are all the products that I'm going to be using. I'm using the Meraki Mosaic. As I said, there's a foil plate and a die for this. You can use either or. I'm going to be using the die this time. I've done it with the foil plate before, so there are projects available with that, but I wanted to go over how to do this with the die. And I think the die, especially this one, creates a really beautiful design. Now, with this, we're going to be using the Meraki Artisan Flora dies. We'll be using the lily. However, I'm just using the smallest floral from this one just to create a little bit of a different card. And then I'm also going to be using the Gilded Expression stamp and die. Now, there is a stamp available in the set that has separate sentiments if you don't want to stamp all of them at once, but that's up to you if you want to purchase that or the one that comes all together, or if you have one or the other, you could use that. Okay, so we're starting off with 2 pieces of cardstock. These are both A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it's just plain white cardstock. Now, I've got some shaped dies here that create a frame. I'm going to use them to cut out a window from one of these because we're going to end up embossing this and then adding ink to it. So you can see how that looks. And then on the other panel, we'll just emboss it so you can see how that looks on its own. So as I line this up, I believe this one is linked in the description. This is actually from Spellbinders, but I'm going to go ahead and attach this and cut this out. Now you can see that I have both of these ready to go. So I'll go ahead and put these away. I'll grab the Meraki Mosaic die. And to start off, let's start off with the full panel. And I'll attach this since I've already cut it to size. I want to make sure it kind of lines up properly, and I'll just add some washi tape to it. Now keep in mind, if you want to use the deboss side, don't add too much tape or have the tape overhanging just a little bit. Moving on to our sandwich. So I'm using Spellbinders Platinum. I'm going to go over what sandwich you should do for this, so that you get a good idea of how to do this. We're starting with plate A and B. You're going to put your die and your cardstock on there with the cardstock facing up. You have E, and then not cutting plate C. Sorry, I'm going to remove that. We want adapter D. Okay, so you got A, B, your die and your cardstock. You've got the E rubber mat, and then you're going to add adapter D. Now, it pretty much shows you the sandwich there on platform B. It's going to show you how to put that together. So if you don't know, or if you want easy reference, just look at that. And if you have a Sizzix or some other machine, you basically use the same type of sandwich and use your acrylic pad if you don't have an adapter instead. And of course, the rubber mat is basically imperative to getting that embossed look. So if you don't have a rubber mat, you could invest in one. It definitely comes in handy for all types of things. So I'm going to carefully remove this tape here because I did want to try and use this debossed side rather than the embossed side. So this is the embossed side, and you can see it looks pretty nice, but I really like this debossed side. So I'm going to show you both of them. We're going to use both in the card today. Now we can go ahead and line up this frame, and I'm just kind of deciding here, do I want to use the debossed or the embossed, and that way I can accordingly place this on either side with the tape so that the tape's not going to go on the side that I'm going to use, right? So I'm going to just attach this here like I did before, and I will run it through my die cutting machine with the exact same sandwich that I showed you earlier. So you can see again that this came out nicely. I'm just really trying to remove the tape nicely so that it doesn't tear anything. So we're going to use the embossed side for the frame, and then in the background we'll have the debossed side. So we got both of them going on, so you can see how they both come together on the card. Now I want to add some ink to the frame. I want it to be a gray color, so I'm going to be using some Pink Fresh ink for this one. And I think I've actually chosen Rocky Slope here. Now, As I add ink to this, I'm darkening the edges here. All four edges, I'm making them the darkest, and then I'm blending it inwards to be a little bit lighter. Now, as this video progresses, and as I put the card together, I do kind of change how I want this frame to look, and I end up kind of cutting off all of those darkened edges because I realize that my flowers are really light and I don't want that frame to basically steal the show. So that's what I ended up doing. So you don't have to darken the edges, just lightly add ink to the frame to give it a little bit of a gray color. And you'll notice as you do that, it picks up some of that, the texture on the dry embossing, and really helps it stand out a little bit. So there's how the two kind of look together. Now, for our lily, I'm taking only these two dies, and I cut out those leafy portions twice and then the actual flower 3 times. I don't know that I'm going to use all the leafy portions. I think I do end up using them all in the end. But I'm keeping that layering guide to the side there for when I actually do put it together. And for now, I'll kind of just place all of these onto my waffle flower mat here to get them ready for adding ink to them. Okay, so now we've got everything on there. I'm going to show you the inks I'm using. I've got Ballet Slipper, Soft Lilac, and Sky Blue. So those are the 3 colors of the flowers. And then for the leaves, I'm going to be using Sage ink. And the sage is like a muted green. I think the sage in the Pink Fresh line is a little darker than I expected, but it still looks really nice with the light flowers. So again, for these flowers, and I'm going to do that for all 3 of them, I'm trying to darken the color closest towards the bottom, and then as I get towards the top, I'm blending out into more of a whiter tone, or a lighter tone of the color that I'm using. So I want the darkest to be the deepest in color, and then we move up for it to get lighter. And I'm going to do that with the Sky Blue, the Ballet Slipper, and the Soft Lilac. And I'll also actually do that on the leaves as well. So I always find that to get this type of two-tone look, you can do it by using 2 colors, or you can do it this way, where you're varying the pressure of your brush, or you're varying the amount of ink you're adding to each area. Keep in mind, a lot of inks, as you're ink blending, tend to be splotchy, so don't kind of add ink and say, oh my god, I messed this up, and just throw it away. Over time, as the ink dries, it tends to even out a bit. So even with these flowers, even after I've cut them out and I've added the ink to it, when you look at them, you'll notice that you won't see too much of that gradation in color where it goes from dark to light, but it will be there just a little bit, which is what I was going for anyways. Now, I often get asked this question, why do you always cut everything out of white? And I'll be completely honest with you, I'm kind of lazy. So I'm kind of lazy when it comes to picking colors of cardstock. And I always find that I'll cut different colors of cardstock and then I have to organize the negative pieces because I can never just throw everything away. And it's a lot of work, right? So when I cut everything out of white, I mean, I have infinite amounts of white cardstock, so I can toss those and I don't have to worry about keeping every little last piece of colored cardstock. And then I've also got, the lack of patience in picking out those colors anyways. So once I cut everything out of white, it makes die cutting much easier, and then it's just a matter of picking your ink colors. And if you have lots of ink colors, this is definitely the way to go, I'd say. Okay, so we're now getting into putting these together. Now, I've gone ahead and attached one of the petals there. So you get that long petal that goes on first, and you'll notice there, like, it fits right in. There's like a kind of heart top, like there's 2 rounds at the top where it fits. You can see it fits there perfectly. And then I'm zhuzhing it up. You'll notice I'm folding the petals, the back piece, I'm folding those petals back, and then the 2 pieces that I attach, I'm folding them down towards me. So it kind of looks more realistic looking. It adds a lot of 3D dimension, and it really gives it a gorgeous look when this kind of, you don't kind of just stick the entire thing down and glue the entire piece, and you have bits of it kind of sticking up. It makes it look realistic. And I did that exact same process for all 3 flowers. Now, I've used this lily set before. I have to say it's amazing. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, when I made this little flower that went with the larger lily, I really loved it. I loved that it was very simple to just cut out those three pieces. Very simple to put it together, and it looks really stunning on its own. So that's why I decided I'd make this card with just this small portion of the lily. Okay, so I wasn't sure about the stems, so I just put those to the side and I'll put all of that together when I put everything on the card base. Now let's move on to our sentiment. I'm using the Gilded Expressions stamp set. Now I believe the stamp set also comes with separate stamps if you don't want to stamp the whole thing out. I'm going to be using some gold metallic ink to stamp these out. And I find when I'm using pigment inks, I need to stamp it a few times to get a really opaque and nice image and crisp stamp. So I like to use a stamp positioner. Any type of stamp positioner will do, as long as you can build up that color, especially because it's pigmented and it's metallic. I find I think this one I stamped out at least 4 or 5 times. I'm not going to show you every time I stamped it out, but that's how I got the final result. And you'll notice that the final result gives a much different look than the first stamp that I did. Now keep in mind it may have been 5 to 6 times that I had to do this because my ink pad may be a bit dry. So if you have a nice juicy ink pad, it's probably going to stamp out in maybe 2 or 3 tries. But I do recommend doing at least more than once to get like a nice crisp stamped image. Now I'm going to go ahead and line this up with the coordinating die, and I will cut all of these sentiments out. I'm not exactly sure which sentiment I want to use, so I'll just push that to the side. And here you'll notice is where I cut off those dark edges. So first of all, I wanted a little bit of a frame anyways, a little bit of a white frame. So I did need to cut it down. And second of all, it fixed two things in one go. One, me wanting a frame, and two, the fact that my flowers are just such a nice, light, subtle color that I can't have this frame being too dark and overpowering it. So now I want this frame to kind of sit forward a little bit and have a little bit of dimension. So I'll go ahead and first off, I'll add that full panel on the debossed side onto my card base. And then for the frame, I'm going to take some foam adhesive. Now I think I needed to cut down the top and the bottom a little bit more because there wasn't as much of a frame there. And I'll go ahead and add some double-sided foam adhesive in order to create just a little bit of a dimension as I put the frame onto the background. Now you can go ahead and be the judge. I've shown you both sides of my dry embossing here. There's the deboss and the emboss side. Tell me which one you like better. And then you've also got two variations. I have one where I just have the dry embossing on white cardstock, and then I have one where I added ink after. So again, you get to see how those two vary and look different. Let me know which one you like better in that effect as well. So emboss side or deboss side, or plain white cardstock, or adding ink on top. Which one do you like the best? Because I gotta say I like them all, and I think they work best for different card projects and different looks that you want to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of placement here. This is always part of all of my card making videos. I don't always include it, but I did want to include it here for you guys to see. Yeah, I'm just placing things. I'm not sticking anything down yet. You see, I'm just sorting through all of those sentiments, kind of picking what I think would look best, where I would place it, moving it around, finding what's going to be most pleasing to the eye. Now, I've kind of positioned those lilies in a fashion that I think would look okay, but they'll probably change a little bit once I get to the end. So now that I have like a basic idea of how I want things to go, I can start sticking things down. I am adding the branches, or sorry, the stems first. I probably should have added them to begin with, but I wasn't sure how I wanted everything to come together. So it is always better to err on the side of caution and maybe attach them at the end. I can see that the stems are short. That purple one is short, so I'm gonna have to use the leaves to kind of cover that so it looks like it's longer. I've got the Hey Friend sentiment there. I want to add it to the top because there's a bit of a space there, but I think I end up changing that. So I'll start adhering these. So I I added liquid glue to the portion that would stick down to the background on the stem and then onto the frame on the left there, but didn't realize, yeah, maybe I want to stick down the body of the flower. So now I'm going back in and I'm going to makeshift add this foam square behind the lily so that it is fully attached to the background. And because I'm adding the foam square, it also allows those curved petals to keep their form. That way, like, it pushes it forward a little in the center and then it can kind of hang back and fold backward behind it, if you get what I mean. And then after I've kind of learned my lesson with this flower, I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the rest of them. So before I put this flower down, I'll go ahead and attach the foam square, add my glue to the petals where I see it's going to touch the frame or the background. And mainly the stems I'm gluing down. The petals, I let them be loose unless they're going to touch the frame. Because remember, that flower is kind of anchored by that foam square, which works perfectly. And now I can start kind of adding some of these leaves here to kind of cover up the fact that the stems are a little short. And that's how you get around that, right? I wish that the stems would have been a bit longer. That way, I mean, that's how I get the variation in this bouquet. So I've got like a couple flowers that are a little lower down, and then I have that purple one that's a little higher up and to the left. And that's all part of composition. And as I said, nobody taught me this. No one said, okay, you're supposed to place it this way. I'm just doing what looks good to my eye. I don't think any crafter really gets a class on that. So it's all like what looks good to your eye. There's no right or wrong way. If it looks good to you, then I'd say it's good to go. However, I do know I did take some classes in school for art and sculpture and things like that. They do kind of teach you a bit of it, but I mean, a lot of it is feeling, just like anything creative, music, art. It's all about a feeling and what feels good, what looks good. That's what you kind of go with, right? And it's all subjective. So just because one person likes one way doesn't mean everyone's going to like that one way, right? And I think that's the beauty of it all. You know, if one person doesn't like it, so be it. Maybe somebody else will. And if you like it, you should always just be good with it. Be good with what you're doing, right? So I swapped out the "Hey friend" sentiment for "You are amazing" because I just felt this card needed that. And I wanted to use something a little different rather than the normal hello, happy birthday, thank you, you know. And I love that this the set has all of these different expressions and you can mix and match them and work with it. So again, since this sentiment is kind of going from that center bit across the frame, I have to add a bit of foam when I'm adding it to the background, and then just liquid glue to add it flat to the frame so that everything's basically on the same level. There is a little bit of a difference in height because I think the foam adhesive I used on the frame is a little thicker than a foam adhesive I'm using on the sentiment. So I probably should have used the same foam adhesive, but I love these little strips of foam that I have. They're just so easy to use, especially for smaller sentiments like this. And then I'll just go ahead and add the amazing here. I think I want to kind of have it offset a little bit. It looks a little more nicer than having it all lined up. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think we got it all together there. So now I just want to add a little bit of bling. Now remember, this card's very subtle. It has all of that texture in the background. I don't want to overpower it or take over it with something else. So I'm just adding some ivory opal gems, and these are very light and subtle, just like the rest of the card. So to begin with, I'm just going to place them where I think they look nice. I'll add a little bit more. I usually add 5 gems at the most, but because this is so subtle, I'll add a little bit more. So I think I end up adding 7 instead. And of course, I always stick to odd numbers. There's 3 flowers, there's 3 sentiment bits, there's odd number of gems. The odd numbers in general just tend to look much better than having everything evened out. And now that I have my gems placed, I'll go ahead and just add some glue and adhere them permanently. And that's my final card. So you can see you've got that variation in the texture and also in the color. So again, let me know which of those you like better: debossed, embossed, and colored cardstock or white cardstock. And I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and everything I've used is linked in the description below. Bye.